Happy Victory Friday, Jets fans, and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, September 20th. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day so far today, as it is the day after a dominant home opener performance from the New York Jets as they defeat the New England Patriots 24-3. In today's episode, I want to break down some more takeaways, get into some injury updates that we got earlier this morning when Robert Saleh spoke to the media, and we also got a report just a little while ago. Positive news on Morgan Moses that we'll get into. We'll get into some stats, some more takeaways, as we always do here on a day after edition of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast, the second day after edition this week that we are celebrating victories. 2 victories in 1 week. Victory Monday, Victory Friday. An awesome week, an awesome time to be a New York Jet fan. We so deserve this team dominating a division rival on prime time last night for the entire NFL world to see. We'll break it all down. As always, before we begin, though, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. NFL season is in full swing. We are already into week number 3. We've got another full Sunday slate coming up. You've got a full college football slate tomorrow. If you want to get in on any of the action, plus baseball action, of course, postseason right around the corner, any betting action for sports, check out BetUS. Plus, my viewers, use my link in the description of this video where you can get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at Huga House. You see me wearing my Aaron Rodgers 20th season Huga House hat right now. If you want the hat I'm wearing right now, or the one that comes in black, they are going fast. They just restocked them, but they're going very fast. I'm not even 100% sure how many they actually have left. So if you want to get your hands on one of these 2 hats, the one I'm wearing now or the black one or any of the other ones that Rodgers rocks all the time, use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. And of course, our friends over at SeatGeek. You need a ticket for an event? Any event, not just football, not just Jets, not just sports, any event. Promo code BUBS on sports for $20 off your first purchase. All right, now let's get into today's episode. As always, appreciate you all tuning in. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe, and appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms that the show can be listened to. Another day after victory for the New York Jets. And, of course, being inside the building last night, today it still feels crazy. It's just surreal what we're seeing out of this team here 3 games in, what we saw last night, specifically last night from Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets offense, and how much fun it is to be a Jets fan right now and legitimately looking forward to seeing the offense on the field, actually watching competent offense take the field, actually watching not even just competent quarterback play, Hall of Fame quarterback play. It's hard to really wrap your mind around what we are living through right now as Jets fans after all the years of pain and suffering and bad quarterback play and bad offense and all of the nonsense. And especially against New England, of course, finally dominating New England. We've been waiting for that moment for years to have New England come into our building and dominate them. Forever, it was New England coming into our building and mopping us and destroying us at home. And last night, that finally changed. And it's awesome. And it still feels hard to believe, but it's actually real. And Aaron Rodgers is slinging the football all over the place. So we'll break down some more thoughts. I'm fired up. I'm still on such a high from last night's win and the start of the season. 3 games in 11 days, a gauntlet to start the year, and you come out of it 2-1, which if any Jets fan would have told you, if you would have told me 2-1, if you would have told any Jets fan 2-1 to open up the year, 3 games in 11 days, you would have 100% signed up for that, especially with the consistent progress you're seeing. And of course, the performance last night under the bright primetime lights. So before we get into some more takeaways, Rodgers, the offense, all that good stuff, break down some statistics from last night's matchup. I want to get to some injury updates. The biggest one being Morgan Moses. Of course, he went down late in last night's game. It didn't look good. When he went down, you saw him rolling on the field in pain. You're sitting there as a Jet fan thinking to yourself, last week, Jermaine Johnson goes down. This week, it's Morgan Moses. Of course, in past years, right? Rodgers going down last year was awful. ABT's gone down. I mean, so many major injuries. And it always feels like anytime the Jets win, they always have to sacrifice somebody. It's always a major injury. Anytime the Jets pick up a W, it always feels like there is a major injury that kind of puts a cloud over the win. And you felt like that might have been the case last night with Morgan Moses, but knock on wood, luckily that wasn't the case. And you've got relatively positive moves today. So this was from Jordan Schultz just a little while ago this afternoon. Says source, Jets right tackle Morgan Moses suffered a knee injury last night that will likely sideline him for at least a couple of weeks. He is unlikely to need surgery, which would be the best case scenario considering how it initially appeared. He's undergoing further tests to confirm, but the team is optimistic that the injury is not as severe as it seemed. And that's really good news considering, like I said, this was a guy that was rolling on the field in pain, was able to get up on his own power. He was down for a while. You were thinking, sitting there, I was thinking any second now, you're going to see the car come out, which is, of course, a dreaded scene whenever the car comes out, especially a guy like Morgan Moses, such a key piece to this unit up front on the offensive line. Got up, walked off with his own power, and luckily everything's okay. He'll miss a little bit of time, but that's why you've got to give some credit to Joe Douglas. The sexy pick would have been to go out and draft a wide receiver, go out and draft Brock Bowers. The smart pick was to go out and draft Olu Fashanu, because now he can step in right away as your swing tackle, step in right away at right tackle, and go out there and produce at a high level. You don't have to worry about turning it over to a Max Mitchell or a Carter Warren. Olu Fashanu is your legitimate sixth man off that bench that you can trust and believe in as one of the top prospects coming out of the draft. So great opportunity now for him. As for Moses' timeline, if I had to guess, I would probably say definitely, of course, doesn't play next week. Probably doesn't play London either, just with the whole travel, all that stuff. If I had to guess, probably back by earliest Buffalo, that Monday night game, because you get the mini bye here. Then you get the Denver game. Then you get that Minnesota game. And then after that Minnesota game, you kind of get an extra day, right? Between the Sunday morning game, I guess our time, but the Sunday game against Minnesota, you get an extra day going into that Monday night game. So between the mini bye and then the extra day going into that Buffalo game, and then over the next 2 weeks, of course, just normal Sunday games, I think you could maybe pinpoint Buffalo as the earliest. Say he misses 2 weeks. Maybe Pittsburgh, somewhere around there. I would say week 6 to week 7 would probably be your target line. Maybe at latest week 8. But it doesn't seem like this is something that's major. It seems like this is something where, 2 to 3 weeks off and he can be back into the fold of things in no time, which is obviously positive. And when you look at what Olu was able to do last night in his kind of small opportunity, of course, Moses goes down late in the game, and it was kind of tough to tell how Olu looked from a pass protection standpoint, because at that point in the game, Jets were up by a lot, running the ball a lot, still taking some chances, still passing it a little bit, but at that point, garbage time, you're just juicing the clock. So a little tough to gauge him. He only had 6 pass blocking snaps, but he played 14 snaps total last night, had a 78.1 PFF run grade, which was good. And he allowed 0 pressures in his limited 6 pass block snaps. So I thought Fashanu last night looked good in the minimal 14 snaps that he played. He'll now get a mini bye, a full week of practice with first team reps. And he's already gotten a lot of first team reps in practice because of the way that the Jets limit both Moses and Tyron Smith, specifically Tyron Smith, who they limit a lot during the week. So Olu's ready to roll, and you've got to have a lot of faith in him that he can step up in this spot. As for one other injury note, Saleh is confident that Mosley will play next week. He basically mentioned that if this was a big game or, a late season matchup Thursday night for a division or whatever, for a division lead, whatever, it seems like he probably would have been in there. He would have fought it out. But considering it was week 3, considering the Jets were, of course, the much more talented team, big picture look at it, the Jets were able to obviously find a way to win, were able to dominate even without Mosley. So kind of smart by the Jets to say, go into the mini bye, don't risk anything major here. Mini bye, come back against Denver. So it seems like it's heading in that direction. So for the first time, it feels like in forever, like the Jets win a game without a major injury. At least the first time, of course, in 2024. It looked like last night we were going to get another major injury when Moses went down, but good thing that's not the case. So that's injury updates here to open up. Now let's get into some numbers and more takeaways, more reaction from last night. So Rodgers last night, I want to get into some advanced stats because they're really impressive. Look, you watch the eye test with Aaron Rodgers, it's beautiful. I think the eye test is even more impressive than the numbers just because of the way he can sling the football, his pure arm. I mean, it's just, he's just a beautiful, one of the most beautiful throwers of the football in NFL, not just now, but NFL history. He's got one of the most strongest arms, of course, one of the most beautiful arms from a throwing perspective in the NFL history. Obviously, we all know what Rodgers can do. And even just seeing go up to the line, of course, recognizing what the defense is throwing at him, making changes at the line of scrimmage, finally having an actual presence at quarterback. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but I don't think people quite understand, if you're not a Jets fan listening to this, how much we've been wanting this forever and we haven't gotten it. Now we got it. And we don't really know how to react because it's just crazy what we're seeing. But that's what I'm talking about. Like the eye test, I think, is you watch Rodgers play, it's awesome. I think it's even better than the numbers. Now, when you look at the box score numbers, right, so far through 3 games, for a guy that's 40 years old coming off a torn Achilles, he's been pretty darn good. 58 of 86, that's a 67.4% completion percentage. 624 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, just 1 pick, 103.1 passer rating, and a 63.7 QBR. I mean, when's the last time that we could say New York Jets quarterback through 3 games is first in the NFL in yards and tied first in touchdown passes and 10th in QBR? Now, I know that's a little bit skewed because the rest of the week 3 games haven't played yet. So I'm sure after this, those yards will probably drop. But still, 600 plus yards through 3 games, 5 touchdowns. Last night was simply remarkable, right? 27 of 35, 77.1% completion percentage, 8 yards per reception, 8 yards per completion, rather. 2 touchdowns, no picks, 118.9 passer rating, 81.8 QBR, 3 carries for 18 yards, was scrambling a lot last night, rolling out of the pocket, showing off his mobility. That was the one maybe knock or the one thing that was present in Rodgers' game early through the first 2 weeks was his lack of mobility, his lack of being able to roll out of pocket, extend plays, throw on the run. That was something he didn't do a whole lot against San Francisco and didn't do a whole lot against Tennessee. That was something it felt like the Achilles injury might have really kind of hurt. But last night, he put on a show from a mobility perspective, rolling out, moving, making throws on the run, scrambling and picking up first downs with his legs, picking up yards with his legs. He had that one nice 11-yard carry. And even that Garrett Wilson touchdown. I mean, you could not have put that ball in a better spot. But Rodgers took a couple steps to his right, threw it off his back foot. That was a vintage Aaron Rodgers Hall of Fame. Couldn't put it in any other spot. Perfect throw to his number 1 receiver in Garrett Wilson for the touchdown. So the box score numbers are impressive. The eye test is impressive. But even some of the advanced analytics. We just talked about the rushing and his mobility last night. He was 5 for 5 for 62 yards and a touchdown last night when running 8+ miles an hour. So tons of success when he was on the move. He was also 8 for 8 for 112 yards on in-breaking routes last night. He also had an 82.1 PFF grade. And this might be the most impressive of them all. Obviously, he completed 77.1% of his passes, which is simply remarkable. I mean, from the days, just the difference. Last year, the last couple years with the Zach Wilson era, we would be praising Zach Wilson if he completed a tick over 50% of his passes. If Zach Wilson was high 50s, we would be like, oh, What a game. Aaron Rodgers is out here completing 77.1% of his passes in the home opener like it's nothing. Just another aspect that makes what happened last night so great. But another number here is so impressive too. 9.5% completion percentage over expected last night is the second highest CPOE in a game over the last 3 seasons in his career. So we saw legitimate, vintage, healthy Rodgers. When you look at the numbers, and of course, you watch him play as well, the CPOE was very, very impressive. 9.5% complete percentage over expected, making some of those tough throws. I mean, you can't talk about enough just about that Garrett Wilson throw. I mean, 95 to 97% of NFL quarterbacks, outside of a select few, Rodgers, Mahomes is probably up there. Outside of the elite, Rodgers and a couple other guys, most quarterbacks throw that ball, and Christian Gonzalez, who is, of course, the corner, he jumps it, and he picks that off, and he's taking that to the house. But Rodgers, being Aaron Rodgers, off his back foot, rolling to his right, delivers a seed. Just remarkable. He's also the PFF's third highest grade quarterback in the NFL through 3 weeks. And he's one of 2 QBs with 4+ big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy plays this year. And that's the crazy part. That one interception that he threw, you can make the case wasn't even his fault. Yeah, he forced a little bit, but it was just a kind of an unlucky play. A good play by the defense to bat it in the air, but kind of unlucky for the fact that San Francisco was right there to pick it off in the air. Like, he got batted, guy right there to pick it off. Kind of unlucky. So you can honestly make the case that that one interception wasn't even on him, and that it was kind of unlucky, and he shouldn't even really have a pick. He shouldn't even really have an interception. But either way, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. I also thought this was crazy, and this can kind of shift into more just talking about the offense and a couple other pieces I want to talk about, moving away from Rodgers here for a second. The offense last night, right? Another big night from a touchdown perspective. 3 touchdowns, of course. Rodgers with the 2 to Lazard Garrett, and then Breece with the punch in the on the goal line. Obviously, the play that got reviewed ended up being upheld for a touchdown. The offense through 3 weeks. We talked about this last week with 6 touchdowns in 2 games. Update. The offense has now scored 9 touchdowns in 3 weeks. To put that into perspective, 11 days. I think this is even crazier. 11 days, the New York Jets have scored 9 touchdowns in 11 days. To put that into perspective, last season, it took the New York Jets 11 weeks to score 9 touchdowns. We are 3 weeks in, and the Jets already have 9 touchdowns. 5 of those coming from the arm of our quarterback. I mean, what more needs to be said? Just special. Some other offensive pieces that deserve a ton of credit from last night. Tyler Conklin didn't mention it in the post-game show, but those 93 yards were actually a career high. Obviously, he had the 5 catches, 93 yards. I talked about it in the preview show. Needed to get Conklin involved. There was very kind of annoying that they didn't, not annoying, but obviously a lot of, a little frustrating the first 2 weeks that they weren't getting him involved. He had 2 catches of 4 targets. Rucker didn't even get any looks as well through the first 2 weeks. Last night was just an awesome performance from Conklin, and a performance that you can really get used to. I mean, you see what Conklin was able to do last night with actual quarterback play and scheming around, like kind of scheming plays to him, and a couple really big grabs across the middle. Just that is so much trust from Rodgers and Conklin. And of course, Conklin making those plays is so big as well. Just being that big body, physical tight end across the middle, which is truly a quarterback's best friend. So he was awesome last night, led the team in receiving yards. If he can keep this up, you're looking at a potential career year for Tyler Conklin. Just keep rolling. It opens so much up. It just, the Jets are already so talented. They're already so tough to stop on offense, especially with the killer bees in the backfields, makes things really difficult. Garrett Wilson, of course, makes things difficult. And teams, like Rodgers said, playing 2 high safeties, said in his press conference, playing 2 two high safeties over top, they've been focused so much on taking Garrett away. And that connection is still heating up. There is still some things that need to be worked out between that connection. But that opens up so much. Like if Conklin can continue to get going, now defense has got to focus on him. Brees and Braylon out of the backfield is such a problem for opposing defenses. Then Garrett. Lazard's been awesome. Mike Williams, I think we'll start to see him really 100% coming up against Denver next Sunday. And now things just open up and they get better and better and better. And that's the crazy part of last night. As good as last night was, there was still some meat on the bone. You could make the case the Jets probably could have had 31 to 34 points last night. They could have probably scored 38. I mean, you just go to the first drive. They probably could score on that drive. They should have. They were moving, penalty, sack, it was over. But they were cruising before that. You don't take that penalty, they probably score. So that's 30 plus. Plus, they also missed the field goal too. So that as well. A rare miss by Greg the Leg, of course, before halftime. So it's crazy to think that as good as the offense was, they probably left, you can make the case 7 to 10 points even so out there. So just more numbers there on Conklin. Really impressive from him. Career high last night, 93 yards. The Brees and Braylon combo, the killer bees, it's awesome. Tennessee, of course, was great last night. 34 total touches, 151 yards, 4.4 yards per touch between those two guys. Of course, they had the touchdown. Brees with the touchdown on the 1 yard line. He's found the end zone every single game. Braylon Allen's a monster. More numbers on him. 4.11 yards after contact per attempt for Braylon Allen. That's top 5 right now among qualified running backs. His 5.1 yards per carry on 19 carries for 96 yards this year is very, very impressive, averaging over 5 yards per carry. And he's the PFF number 1 graded running back in rushing yards, in rushing grade rather. So grading wise, he is the number 1 running back in the NFL grade wise. And no, I'm not saying he's the best running back in football, but it just shows you yards after contact, what he's been doing, taking advantage of every rep he's got, becoming a threat in the passing game, which is so big. Talked about that a ton last night, talked about it a ton in the game preview to keep getting him involved. It is such a special backfield. Hands down, the best backfield in the NFL. Hall of Fame quarterback, best backfield in the NFL, reliable tight end, rising star receiver, a monster one-on-one veteran that just mosses people left and right. What a time to be a Jets fan. What a time to be a Jets fan. So those are some of the offensive notes, skill position-wise. Obviously, Lazard had another really nice night with the touchdown. He's opened up the season with 3 touchdowns. That's first in the NFL. He's also had 11 receptions, which is 18th, 148 yards, which is 18th. So he's been a top 20 receiver through the first 3 weeks, which is a crazy thing to say when you thought going into this year he would be, you thought leaving last year, I should say, he would be, he was kind of a lost cause. Like, you're looking to maybe trade him. Do you cut him? Whatever. That's how bad it was for Lazard last year. And, this is just a complete 180 from what he did last year to what he's done so far, 3 games in. It's been remarkable. He's been great, and he's made a lot of really, really big catches, and of course got the scoring started last night. As for the offensive line, couple guys really stood out here early on this season, but especially last night. Joe Tippmann last night, 85.8 PFF grade, allowing just 1 pressure on 40 pass block snaps. He had an 85.6 run blocking grade, 3rd highest graded center through the first 3 weeks here. So grading wise, he grades out as a top 5 center, which is good to see. Of course, Tippmann's a guy that got a lot of heat during camp, bad snaps, but has really turned it on. End of camp, turned it on. Of course, played that 1 preseason game, got the snaps figured out, and he's been great. And last night was the same thing. I mean, the pockets that Rodgers was able to work with are also something we haven't seen in forever. A clean pocket for a quarterback. How about that, Jets fans? Elijah Vera Tucker, another guy I have to highlight. 0 pressures on 40 pass block snaps last night. He's got one pressure through 3 games. And this is a guy, don't forget, it's coming off a torn Achilles as well. So obviously Rodgers is going to take the spotlight of returning from a torn Achilles and looking like vintage Rodgers. But a ton of credit also goes to AVT coming off the same injury, back-to-back years too, where he had season-ending injuries. For a guy to go out there tonight or last night, do what he did, do what he's done through the first 3 weeks, really show no signs of rust at all. I mean, I can maybe only recall one bad run blocking rep. I think it might have been against San Francisco. But other than that, he's been pretty much perfect. And I want to continue to credit this offensive line because I know how the offensive line goes, right? Especially in the media. Nobody talks about it when it's going good. They only talk about when it's going bad. So I want to give the offensive line props as much as possible because we can't only talk about them when they're struggling. Not many people are talking about the offensive line because they are doing their job. And that's so refreshing. And a big reason why Rodgers is having success as well. I also want to mention John Simpson's been really just something this offense and really this team in general needed. He's been such a good physical presence. Last night, of course, when Breece Hall got thrown to the ground by Tavai of New England and they threw the flag for unnecessary roughness, Simpson was the first guy over in Tavai's face, telling him, get off of him, pushing him, shoving him a little bit, just letting him know. Simpson's been he's done that a lot. Anytime Rodgers has taken a hit, anytime, whether it was last night with Breece getting thrown to the ground, unnecessary roughness, anytime something happens, Simpson's been right there to back up, whether it's his quarterback to protect his running back. He's been a really nice breath of fresh air from a physicality perspective. And he's been really good as well up front. Been an underrated, under the radar piece. Him and Tyron Smith, rather, I think have had really, really good chemistry on that left side. And I know Tyron Smith didn't have the best game of his career last night, but still obviously good enough. And Simpson's a guy that is just really just brings a different, I think he's just a great guy to have in that room. Just a physical guy that's not going to back down from anything. That's been a breath of fresh air for a unit that, if we're being honest, has been knocked around, bruised, and battered over the last couple years. Defensively, offense was great. So many positives. Defense as well was great. Got to give them some love and respect. This number I thought was interesting. As much as through the first 2 games going into last night, the defense was a concern. Coming out of it, the defense all of a sudden looks like it's an elite unit that's off to an historic start because they are. The Jets have 14 sacks in 3 games, which is tied for the most through 3 games in franchise history since first tracked in 1963. The last time the Jets had 14 sacks through 3 games, you have to go all the way back to 1966. So even before the New York Jets have won a Super Bowl, you have to go all the way back before that to find when the last time they had 14 sacks through 3 games was, through their first 3 games. Last night, they hit their 14th. So despite a rocky game against the Niners and a rocky first half against Tennessee, it feels like the Jets have slowly turned this thing around where they played well in the second half against the Titans and they dominated all 60 minutes last night against New England. They have now played really good football over the last 6 quarters, I would say, from a defensive perspective. Ever since those 2 Will Levis turnovers, there has been something that has clicked with this group, and it needs to keep clicking because if the defense keeps playing like that, that was vintage Jets defense last night. That was, I shouldn't say vintage because it's not that long ago. That was 2022, 2023 Jets defense last night. And this time it had an offense. That was what the biggest difference was. And that's what made last night too so special. Seeing this defense play with the lead and burying a division rival. I noticed this too, picking up some stats this morning and watching back the film. Jets blitz per set last night, 40% of dropbacks, which is the most they've ever done under Saleh. They even sent Chuck Clark on a safety blitz. They did a couple different things last night, and I'm glad they did, because while you don't want to blitz a ton and you don't want to get into habit blitzing a ton because blitzing can only get you so far at times. You blitz, it exposes you in the back end. So blitzing is good. You don't want to blitz a ton, but the Jets don't blitz. I mean, they barely blitz. I mean, this was a team that blitzed the least amount of times last year. They blitzed under 100 times last season. They barely blitz. But solid mention, and this is credit to the coaching staff. Really credit to the coaching staff. Really all around last night, even offensively. You want to give some credit to Nate Hackett. He deserves some credit. The way they were able to scheme guys like Tyler Conklin open, get him involved, the way they were able to continue to get Braylon and Brees involved, put more of a focus on Mike Williams. Last night was a all-around great game from not just a player's perspective, but coaching staff as well. You want to knock Saleh on clock management, whatever. I'm not going to do that on a Victory Friday. I'm not going to be negative like that. I'm just not that guy. I'm going to praise what we saw last night, and you got to give a ton of credit to White Cotton, the defensive line coach, and Jeff Ulbrich, because they went into even Saleh as well, who, of course, has got his hands on this defense as well, being a defensive mind. They knew that New England was banged up front. They knew New England wasn't very good up front. And what they did was they outcoached them. They went out, realized that, and said, we're going to send some blitzes. We're going to send the house. We're going to pressure you a ton. We're going to throw a lot at you. And you're not going to be ready for it. And they were not at all. So that's a big credit to the coaching staff. Brissett was pressured on 8 of 10 dropbacks when blitz, taking 3 sacks while just completing 2 passes. So blitzes were working last night, definitely for the Jets. I thought the numbers were wild. 29 pressures and 15 quarterback hits. 9 players had at least 2 pressures. 14 players had at least 1 pressure. Quinnen had 5, McDonald 6, Kinlaw 3. That is just crazy. Crazy. Just absolutely wild. Swarming all over the place last night for the first time this year. Will McDonald. Got to talk about him. I thought this number was really crazy. Since last year, Will McDonald has 8 sacks and 161 pass rushing snaps, which is 1 sack every 20.1 pass rush snaps. Now, you might be wondering, why am I saying this? Well, put that into perspective with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is averaging 1 sack every 37.3 snaps last season. So Will McDonald essentially is putting up more sacks in a lesser amount of time than Myles Garrett. 1 sack every 20.1 pass rush snaps for Will McDonald, as opposed to 1 sack every 37.3 pass rush snaps for Myles Garrett. And that's why you look at Will McDonald, you look at the numbers, 6 pressures last night, and he's got 5 sacks, which is second in the NFL. He is off to an elite all-pro star. He really is. I mean, he was all over the place last night. Clear speed off the edge, the athleticism, no match for New England. I mean, that's how dominant. And it started in Tennessee. And a ton of credit goes to Will McDonald, because it feels like the minute Jermaine Johnson went down, he recognized, I need to step up. I need to play a big role. I need to be who they drafted in the first round. And he's done that and some, with 5 sacks in 3 games when he had 3 all of last year. I mean, you look at the numbers, it's crazy to see what he did last year and what he's done this year in 3 games. It really is wild. It's crazy. He's been the Jets' best pass rusher by far. He's been one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Forget about just the Jets in the NFL. That's how good he's been. Keep that up. And this defense will continue on this trend of what they look like last night, which is a top 5, top 10 defense, which is what they've been over the last 2 seasons. So tons of credit to Will McDonald, and especially a person like me who I wasn't as high on him as maybe some. I had my doubts, but he's proving everybody wrong with his start. Some other standouts, just the entire defense line as a whole, I talked about. I mean, they were just crazy last night, just amazing. Chuck Clark had a really good game, by far his best game as a Jet. Really rough week last week for him, so to see him bounce back on a short week was great. Had the forced fumble, had the sack. He was excellent last night, by far his best game. He was flying all over the place, which was really good to see. Also, of course, had a tackle for loss. So he was really, really good last night. Sauce Gardner also had a really nice bounce back game. Not really that's surprising. He had one bad game against Tennessee, and you had small portion, not much, but a small portion of people saying, oh, what's happened to Sauce? You know what happened to Sauce? He had one bad game. Last night, I think he panned out to be, I want to say it was, I've got my notes here. He was the 4th highest graded Jet last night. So with an 82.6 grade, sitting between Tippmann and Rodgers. So I would not say that last week was an outlier, I guess, because Sauce stepped up last night and played well. Had a much better game than he did a week ago. Bounced back in a big way. Offensive line, too. More credit goes to them. They were great. And we'll see Olu coming up here in a starting role on Sunday. So that'll do it. Some takeaways again. More takeaways from last night's 24-3 blowout over the New England Patriots. I wish they could still score right now. I wish they could play another quarter and continue to run up the score. It feels great. Today, drinking all the Patriots fans' tears, seeing all the Patriots fans on social media. Oh, we're going through a rebuild. We're doing this. We're doing that. I couldn't care less. You're just salty that you lost. You're upset you lost. You're upset your team stinks. You're upset that you came into the building and got smoked. That's all it is. Changing of the guard. Jets are back at the top. And that's great to see. So we'll be back with a lot more content coming your way. Of course, weekend off here from a Jets perspective. So we'll have more content, of course. So stay tuned. And until next time, as always, JETS, 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 Jets.